In the middle of the ocean, two women fight for their lives when they realize that the real predator isn't the creature beneath the waters, but the man who captured them. One morning, Tucker, the owner of a shark cage diving operation in Australia, happily welcomes his two new customers. Greg introduces himself as a Canadian tourist, whereas his companion Heather shares that she's from England. He then apologizes for not scheduling a booking, explaining that they were supposed to go to SeaWorld with their classmates, but they overslept. With this information, the businessman inquires if no one is aware of their whereabouts, and they confirm. The woman finds his questions strange, but he simply jokes that he wants to ensure that their last will is in order, because they'll be swimming with the sharks. Later on the boat, the dive master recounts that a shark mauled him when he was a child, but he luckily survived. He shows them his scar, emphasizing that it gave him a different perspective on the animal. Curious, Heather asks if someone was supposed to be watching over him, but he sullenly reveals that he was a loner. During the activity, the English tourist fears for her life as bull sharks surround their cage. Worried for her, her companion calms her down by offering his arm. Soon enough, she realizes that the creatures aren't as aggressive as she expected them to be. After leaving the cage, Greg expresses his gratitude to Tucker for squeezing them into his schedule. Unexpectedly, the owner stabs him and pushes him to the ocean, allowing the sharks to feast on him. He then welcomes the remaining tourist to his real business, causing her to scream in horror. The next day, at a convenience store, a customer asks the cashier if they have jumper cables, but learns that they're out of stock. Helpless, he asks the other customer if she has one by chance, but she says no. Outside, the same woman dumps the contents of her Slurpee cup, which conceals a pint of ice cream. She then encounters the man from earlier, and she repeats that she can't help him, but the man continues to pester her. When she refuses, he threatens to report her for shoplifting the ice cream. The woman gets angry, so the man explains that he just badly needs a ride back to his car. Moments later, as his car is getting a jump start, the stranger learns that the woman is an American drifter and surfer. Therefore, he gives her a local secret. He instructs her to look for the blue bench on the shore, and if she sits in the middle of it, she'll double her wave count. He then introduces himself as Moses, a real estate agent, and the woman shares her name as Zephr. Before he leaves, the surfer notices that they're listening to the same song, much to his delight. Because of their undeniable attraction to each other, the pair spends the night making love. At dawn, Moses secretly prepares an early breakfast for his companion, but when he goes outside to deliver it, he's disappointed that his driveway is empty as the woman has left. At the beach, Zephr is attaching her surfboard's fin and discovers that she's missing her fin key. As she tries to search for one, Tucker appears and offers her his key. She promises to return it, but he encourages her to keep it as he has more. Once she's secured the fin, the businessman leaves and bids her farewell. Suddenly, she receives a message from Moses, who wonders if he disappointed her in bed. She informs him that she wants to have an early surf, hence her sudden departure. Since she's engrossed with texting, Tucker is able to sneak behind her and suffocate her with a plastic bag. By morning, Moses heads to the beach and stumbles upon Zephyr's van, though she's nowhere in sight. Meanwhile, Zephr finds herself in a boat, chained to a bed. Alarmed, she tries to look for a way out, but only finds Heather, who's also trapped. She asks her about their whereabouts, and the college student believes they're in the middle of nowhere. Unable to accept their situation, the surfer rummages under her bed, hoping to find a tool to pick their handcuffs. During this, she finds a name engraved on the wall, and she becomes emotional after realizing that it belongs to the previous captive. Back in the city, Moses is on his way to work when he sees that Zephyr's car is getting towed. This makes him suspect that something has happened to her, believing that she wouldn't abandon her car. And so, he heads to the police station to make a report. But the officer finds the case less urgent, believing it's natural for her type of lifestyle. That night, Heather expresses her regret for taking a gap year despite her mother's disapproval. She mourns the fact that they fought before she left, and now, she worries she won't see her again. Curious, Zephr asks why her mother forbade her from taking the gap year, and the student reveals that her mother worried for her safety. Moving on, Heather wonders why the drifter arrived in Australia. She admits that she wants to surf and prefers to be away from home, especially since she's been around numerous foster homes. The student then presumes that she must have been from a correctional facility because she knows how to pick a lock. Zephr confirms that she was a detainee, but she didn't learn from there. At that moment, she notices that Heather's top has an underwire, so she asks for it. Right away, the captive disrobes and throws the piece of clothing to her companion. Once the surfer removes the metal, she attempts to pick the lock, but she stops midway after sensing their captor's arrival. Tucker then enters their room and offers them their meal. Suspicious, Heather refuses, but the man still serves it to her just in case she's hungry. He then offers her water, but the woman remains hesitant. To entice her, he warns her that they'll need to stay hydrated due to the humidity. Eventually, she drinks water with gusto. Because of her action, the man notices that she's bare underneath the sheets. Before he investigates, Zephr intervenes by rudely commanding him to give her food. When she receives her meal, she chugs the water and slams the cup on the tray to assert dominance. Her behavior earns a scolding from Tucker, who warns her that her tough facade won't work on him, as he's the dangerous one between them. Once he leaves, the drifter then continues to pry the cuffs open using the wire. Unfortunately, she begins to feel nauseous and abruptly loses consciousness. That night, on the deck, Zephr feels cautious when Tucker starts to set up a camera. She asks what he's doing, but the man ignores her and continues to admire the scene he has created. Afterward, he goes to Heather and cuts a lock of hair from her head, which will serve as his souvenir. Next, he gently awakens her, but she starts to fear what awaits her fate. On his way to the controller, he educates his prey about the reason sharks are scarier than mosquitoes. For him, people instinctively fear sharks because they perceive them as the top of the food chain. Subsequently, he presses a button, and the crane hoists Heather in the air, causing her to panic. Zephr also screams but remains unable to help her friend. Now left dangling above the water, the student pleads to see her mother one last time. Sadly, Tucker lowers her to the shark's location. Zephr begs for their captor to stop, and eventually, Tucker complies, but only after half of Heather's body is already underwater. Because of this, the sharks surround her and proceed to devour her while their owner enjoys filming the gruesome scene. Following this, Tucker places Heather's hair and the videotape of his recording in a case, satisfied with his new trophy. Then, he hides it in a cabinet, which boasts numerous mementos from his previous captives. This time, he starts preparing Zephr's case so she can suffer the same fate tomorrow. His lone captive screams in her room as she fails to unlock her handcuffs. The next day, Moses stays at the beach, hoping that his lover will eventually arrive. Meanwhile, on the boat, Tucker tries to serve his captive breakfast, but she kicks the tray out of resentment. Because of this, he educates her about why sharks are important to the ecosystem. He believes that sharks are like him. They bring order and prevent weaker creatures from acting freely. Disgusted, Zephr criticizes his twisted words, emphasizing that he's acting mighty because his mother probably abandoned him as a child. She then compares him to a pollutant that floats in the ocean, not a shark. This offends him, so he abruptly leaves. Alone, the surfer notices the waste bucket near her bed and grabs it. Using her resourcefulness, she removes the handle and snaps it in two, giving her a sharp, makeshift weapon. Shortly after, she pretends to be asleep as her captor attempts to inject her with a sedative. Immediately, she stabs him with the sharp weapon, causing him to stumble backward and hit his head on the metal railing. Zephr uses this opportunity to grab the key from his belt loop and unlock her cuffs. Afterward, she attempts to take his knife, but he awakens. Alarmed, the woman sprints outside and tries to lock him in the room, but she's no match for his strength. Without a choice, she runs and climbs to the exit, only for Tucker to grab her leg. He injects her with the sedative, but she manages to kick him in the face. Though hurt, she heads to the navigation room and tries to contact help. Unfortunately, there's no signal. Just then, she notices a yacht nearby, so she tries to shout for help. To her surprise, the boat owner returns, determined to kill her this time. However, she refuses to surrender and threatens to throw his filming equipment into the water. Since he continues to pursue her, she has no choice but to dispose of the equipment, much to his anger. Helpless, Zephr dives into the ocean, but the sedative immediately knocks her unconscious. The following day, Moses reviews the security footage on the beach and spots a mysterious car leaving the area around the same time his lover was there. Suspicious, He zooms into the car's logo, learning that it's from a shark cage diving business. Meanwhile, Tucker leaves his boat to buy a new camera when Dave, his neighbor, stops him. He shares that he plans to introduce new customers to him, unaware that his friend is a serial killer. A while later, Moses visits Tucker's boat and knocks on the door. Having received no response, he looks around for an entrance. Just then, a series of muffled sounds of struggles comes from below the boat, halting him in his tracks. Upon recognizing that it's Zephr, he instantly breaks a window and sneaks in to rescue her. There, he finds her restrained in a bed. The surfer promptly instructs him to find something to pick the lock of the handcuffs and to contact the police. When Moses is on his way to the navigation room, Tucker tackles him before he can even reach out for help. During a fierce and intense fight, Moses manages to subdue the killer. However, Dave, thinking his friend is in danger, strikes the intruder on the head, immobilizing him. Not long after the chaos, the neighbor hears Zephyr's screams, ultimately realizing that his neighbor is a wicked man. Before he can process everything, Tucker punishes him with a hook, instantly killing him. In a hurry, the killer decides to change route to end his project, choosing to set sail to Hangman's Shoals. Meanwhile, Moses is imprisoned with Zephr, and he apologizes for failing to rescue her. Still, the woman appreciates his efforts but wonders if he managed to contact the police. He says no, making her feel hopeless about getting out alive. Moses can only offer comfort by saying that he admires her for her strength, emphasizing that she deserves better. The sentimental moment is interrupted when Tucker comes in, carrying a harness for his new captive. At the boat's deck, he hoists Moses in the air while Zephr is handcuffed. Even with her constant pleas, the killer remains determined to use him as shark bait. Thinking quickly, Zephr frantically instructs Moses to hold still to avoid attracting the shark's attention. This saves him from being devoured, so the angered Tucker pierces through his abdomen to trigger his pet's bloodlust. Fortunately, a chopper passes by, so the captor takes both of his captives back inside the boat to avoid suspicion. While Tucker remains vigilant of any witnesses, Zephr plots to break her thumb to free herself from the handcuffs. Before she can proceed, however, Tucker enters the room to provide them with food. After he leaves, Zephr resumes her plan and ultimately endures the pain as she bites off her thumb. Later on, the killer returns, only to find her finger on the pillow. While he's distracted, the surfer leaves the room and locks the sinister man inside. Just as she reaches the navigation room, Tucker discovers an exit and disables the boat's power to stop her from calling for help. The man then creeps towards her, but she turns and attacks him with flares. Right away, she sprints to the kitchen, where she finds an exit that leads to the deck. Unfortunately, her harness gets stuck on a piece of glass, allowing the killer to grab her leg and pull her back to the kitchen. There, the pair engages in a ferocious fight, where Zephr uses a pan to beat him down. With the momentary freedom, the woman jumps into the water and swims to find help. As she attempts to reach the shore, Tucker, in a jet ski boat, chases after her. Gradually losing her strength from swimming, the man manages to catch up to her and subdues her. Following the intense chase, the killer awakens Moses and urges him to look at his lover, who's serving as the new shark bait. At that moment, a huge great white shark arrives, thrilling Tucker, who exclaims that they'll have a big night. He starts to lower Zephr into the water, but she quickly kicks the approaching shark. Annoyed at her actions, Tucker grabs a spear and encourages the creature to devour the bait. However, the animal refuses and disarms him, allowing the surfer to get a hold of the weapon. Now, she tries to protect herself from the shark, but unexpectedly, it stops pursuing her. Zephr uses the chance to climb out of the water, but the shark returns. Tucker, with a camera in hand, startles her, causing her to fall into the ocean, where she comes face to face with the formidable great white shark. Initially, she's frightened by the creature, but she remains calm and steady. This leads to the shark losing interest in her, so it swims away. At the deck, the killer is on the lookout for his missing captive, unaware that she had already climbed onto the back of the boat. She aims a spear gun at him and shoots him. Tucker falls into the ocean and attempts to swim back to the boat with great panic. Eventually, the great white shark catches the scent of his blood and attacks him while his camera captures the tragic fate, giving him a taste of his own medicine. As the shark swims off, Zephyr's foot is entangled in the spear gun's shooting line, dragging her back into the ocean. Moses witnesses this, so he screams out for the woman, but receives no answer. He soon realizes that she might have died, and he falls unconscious. Unbeknownst to him, the surfer is simply nearby, and she spots a party boat that can rescue them. With a renewed sense of hope and determination, she swims back to Moses' location. She attempts to wake him up, but he remains unconscious. Frantic to save him, she uses the remaining flares and fires them above the boat as a signal for help. She then rushes back to her friend's location and tries to awaken him again. When he's still unmoving, she decides to confess her feelings for him, noting that he's her reason for living. Soon enough, Moses regains consciousness, and the two reignite their relationship, awaiting a future together as soon as they return to shore. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.